welcome to another exciting, hair-filled, fun-filled episode. I'm sorry. Radiorama. Anyway, I'm extremely worn out today. We had our annual Radio Day by the Bay event yesterday, and there was a lot of friendly folks that came out and supported our event, bought some radios, bought some junk in the backyard. I usually spend the entire day running around, and so I came home and crashed. Actually fell asleep in my chair, this very chair that I'm sitting in right now. So if I sound like I'm groggy, that's because I am. But right now, let's get back to the radios. We have a 1949 Arvin model 602 and a Bakelite cabinet. Whether or not it works, I don't know, so we're going to try that out. And because my channel has a warning in the beginning to not do what you see on this channel, I'm doing what you should not do, which is immediately turn an unknown set in. I don't do this with the set that has a power transformer because you can fry the power transformer. The worst that might happen here is I might pop.
That have never been done before. Media hype reported Trump tossed around the possibility.
Well, it works fine. Now, you know, when I was a kid and I collected these things, if they worked, I was like, oh, goody. That was the end of it. You know, I'd clean them up and put them on the shelf. But these are sets that are going to go out into the wild amongst the general public, and so they need to be at least looked at. There's a possibility someone restored this. There's a very, very, very good possibility that someone just did the bare minimum, and some repairman in the past just got it up and running again, replaced the electrolytics, maybe another cap or two. I suspect most of what's inside is original, as in 1949 original. I'm trying to decide what to do about the Bakelite. It's not in very good shape. It's very dull. So I could either try to wax it, or I could give it a paint job. I can't figure out what to do. My wife says I should not paint it, and she's usually right. So I'll have to just think about that as I'm restoring it. All right, well, here's a look in the inside, and it's a little bit more of a sensitive set. It's a 6-tube unit, and I'm not sure why it has this weird plate back here. Seems a little odd. Anyway, I see like a little piece of wire someone's twisted in there, so someone has at least taken this up out of the cabinet. There's 3 screws holding the chassis in. It looks like the chassis has a bottom cover, probably for shielding purposes. Yes, there we go, model 602. Noblit Sparks Industries Incorporated, Columbus, Indiana. Remember, Radio Manufacturing Association. And here's all our patent information from RCA and Hazeltine Corporation, which owned pretty much all of the chassis designs back then. Alright, so let me take these screws out. We'll pop the bottom off and take a look inside. Alright, so here is a look underneath. And it appears that other than someone having added this power cord, I don't understand this, they just spliced it to little nibs of the old one. But everything in here is original, and it has around 8 paper capacitors, 3 electrolytic capacitors. This is the underside of the electrolytic can, and it is a floating chassis. You can tell because the electrolytic is attached to a plastic spacer. You see the little crimped over tabs. That's the body of the capacitor. That's its ground. And here is the to the ground capacitor. Of course, probably completely the wrong type and value. I don't even care what the value is. It's going to be changed to a safety capacitor. Got a couple of big whoppers here. What is that guy? 2/10 of a microfarad. Interesting to look at that we have two transformers here. What could that possibly be doing? Why would you need 2? Could be that maybe they have a combination. Maybe it's a bucking transformer or something. That's really bizarre. The speaker has a few rips in it. Definitely need to patch that with some glue, some flexible glue. And the values are probably embossed on this can up here. I can't see it. Looks like we have a crispy spider carcass. It's interesting, this radio, even though it's from 1949, sure strikes me as something that looks like it was built in the 1930s, because you've got all cloth wiring. A bunch of the tubes on top have grid caps, and I don't know, maybe, I don't know. It looks like this has the same issue I see with a lot of these period sets where they ground the grids of the tubes, and that can cause the set to fail safety unless they're glass, in which case it looks like they actually all are, so luckily I don't need to worry about that. The metal tubes are the ones that tend to have a little bit of a short with the grids going to ground that way. Alright, well, I looked at the schematic, and one of these is a choke. Now, I'm going to fully admit I'm not an electrical engineer, so I'm not sure why you need an iron core choke in this thing. There's probably a very good technical reason, and probably one of you guys knows exactly why. I'm asking one of my friends right now, so maybe I'll get the answer while I'm working on it. The electrolytic, while I was looking at the schematic, has surprisingly low values. It's I'm usually expecting to see 50 microfarads or thereabouts, and these are like 10, 10, and 20. And one of the 10 microfarad ones I believe is a bias because it's only like 10 volts. The others are 150 volts. So I'll need to replace each one of these individual sections with a brand new shiny electrolytic capacitor. Might need to get some crap out of the way. Like I make myself some room by getting these installed first. Let's see, 0.05, 400 volts. I bet this one is going to be very simple. Oh shit! Just dropped the phone. Sorry, folks. All right. What are you? 01, 400 volts. I am so tired right now. Ugh, why am I filming this? Well, I didn't make it very far yesterday. I started to recap and I was just like, I'm too tired. Like, I really shouldn't be doing this right now. I'm going to make mistakes. So I cut it out for the day, and actually seriously spent the rest of the day sitting in my easy chair, and went to bed early, got up, and now I feel pretty much back to normal. Had time to think of this about this a little bit. First of all, I did check the value that's on the physical capacitor. It doesn't agree with what is in the schematic. That doesn't mean it wouldn't necessarily work with those values, but I'm going to replace with it what is in the values on the can. The other thing too is I was talking with some of my friends about what this could be doing here, and I looked at it, and it is directly connected to one of the electrolytic capacitors, and it's a choke. And so what it's doing here is that it's just simply adding a little more rippling. Well, it's doing a little bit more of the knocking down the ripple on the AC, so it's smoothing out the AC a little bit more. It's kind of odd. Usually you just see electrolytic capacitors doing that job, but I guess they chose differently on this one. Probably means it's pretty clean sounding. I mean, it actually sounded halfway decent when I tested it before I'd done anything to it. Anyway, it calls for a 50, a 20, and a 20 microfarad electrolytic. So I have these three new modern capacitors that will replace each one of those. And if you've never done this before, the stripe means negative. The other side by default is positive, and you do not want to get those put in backwards because they will blow up, sometimes in a very frightful manner, and you don't want those popping away in your ear. Make sure to use the ground of the electrolytic, which is these twisted lugs that go through this plastic spacer. It's important because some people, when they're new, will be, oh, I'll just go to chassis ground. You don't want to do that. Not only will the radio probably sound like crap, but then you've created a shock hazard. So we want to make sure that we preserve the set's floating ground design for safety reasons. And again, we want to replace this to other side of the line capacitor with this blue safety capacitor. Are you with me? I know it's boring. You've probably seen 10,000 of these videos, and I just happen to be joining the foray, but it's something that I do on a daily basis. And so thanks for sticking with me. I'm going to replace this electrolytics first, then we'll give it a test to make sure it still works. Okay, so I got the electrolytics replaced. Not easy in this chassis. Those leads were very short, so I had to just cram those electrolytics under creative places to get them enough leeway for those leads. Here's the safety cap, and the cap next to it I replaced it as well, just for the heck of it. And so now it's time to do a test. Let's see if it's going to still work. Nothing's worse than when you start working on something that worked and it doesn't work. I don't see anything smoking away. I don't smell anything either.
Absolutely. He's the comparison with other players of the league.
They were separated for 2 years, and they got divorced. And he knew, yeah, like I said, I'm pretty sure he had met Megan at that.
Well, I think this I think the set needs, either it's got some dirty contacts or it needs to be realigned. Sometimes that's not unusual for that to happen. Or it could be that when I installed this capacitor, I accidentally bent that wire, and those two were making a short. So let's see. Turn it down.
Overlooking everything because I didn't check the contract, but they didn't give him a contract, but they gave him money.
Well, I'm not going to do anything like that until I replace the rest of the capacitors. It's behaving somewhat normally, but again, I think there may be some dirty contacts. Maybe it needs to be adjusted and realigned. Who knows? Okay, the set is now fully recapped, and we're going to see if there's any change. Remember, form it. Let's see.
Lawsuit, or even the other lawsuits that were filed last week against Northwestern, he did name a lost communication.
Well, like, you see the new spring of the...
I think what it is like it doesn't like me touching that. I feel like I'm shorting out the signal whenever I touch this thing. Anyway, what I'm going to do is do a few things. I'm going to flip it upside, maybe wiggle the tubes in their sockets, maybe clean the contacts on the antenna terminals. Because when I touch this, it gets much, much better. It makes me think like maybe this connection isn't that good. It still doesn't seem that happy. Let's see if I can do a little tune-up here.
Was way conservative last year. And by the way, makes you good at moving around in the pocket to get them aside, right? Like, nobody mentions, we talk about the Mahomes and the Josh Allens of the world, and nobody mentions Justin Herbert is a guy that if you collapse the pocket, I put him in that category like we put Drew Brees in, right? Like, you could collapse the pocket around Brees, and then all of a sudden he's just over there, and no.
Sibling word to pride is stubbornness. And the other day I was talking with an agent who has negotiated multiple contracts already, and he said he is stubborn and he has his beliefs. You know, he's the one who negotiated the Albert Pujols contract. He's the one who, pursued Anthony Rendon in part because he believes in offense. And look, when you talk to front office people who are involved in the.
I was born in 1961, 4 years after, 4 years after independence. That's such a beautiful.
It still seems kind of weak on one side. I still wonder if I have a short in this antenna somewhere.
Wesley Financial Group is not a law firm. This story is called The Ugly Truth About Timeshare. Your family favor by buying a timeshare.
Yeah. I noticed it did have this extra wire with it. So I'm going to connect some wire and see if that does anything different. I said just adding that little length of wire made all the difference in the world.
OnDeck makes it easy. You can apply in minutes. And if approved, get your small business loan.
For do-it-yourselfers, go to SG Carpet for the nearest showroom.
Potential of newfound greatness at SEO-USA.org.
Might still test the tubes, but it seems to be very happy just with like 2 feet of wire. So if that's really all it takes, then so be it. I've done stranger things. It seemed like this was the alignment was kind of out, so the audio sounded really like crap. So I had to tweeze these guys back and forth until I got it to just sound just right. Sometimes it takes a lot of playing with it. You just got to listen. I know the right way to do it is using a signal generator, but I'm too lazy to get it down off the shelf. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is oil the bearings on the front and the back of the tuning condenser. I'll make it turn a lot easier. Also cleaned out the spaces, the gaps between the tuning condenser plates, make sure there's no debris in there. I did clean up all the chassis, clean all the tube sockets. Need to clean the tone and the volume pot. I'm going to hook it up again just to make sure that we're firing all cylinders. I also need to patch the holes that are in the speaker. In fact, I'll just do that now. All right. It's working pretty good now.
That state troopers falsified thousands of tickets over the last. Truly a gift that the work community.
Team Paul Pierce only 4 times. Second and third team never. And I think.
Fundamental idea meant back in Genesis chapter 2.
Anyway, it's much cleaner than it was. I can't help but think maybe there was some debris or maybe some cat whiskers that were in the tuning condenser, because just cleaning that made a huge difference. So electrically, oh yeah, what I also did is I patched all the holes in the speaker, and I used a product that I've been using for years called Lexel. It's just a clear, sticky substance, and it never hardens. And you want that for something that's supposed to move around like a speaker cone, because if you put something stiff on it, then it's going to sound like crap. And believe me, I've seen a lot of people do that. So now that I've done this, I need to make a decision here. To paint or not to paint? That is the question. All right, moving on to the case. It looks like someone cleaned the case, because basically the mold casting that was originally on this that made it glossy is now dull, completely dull. It'll never look like anything other than that. And usually I don't have to think about this as much, but I do decide I am going to paint this one. I think it'll look better. I mean, dull brown is not exciting. I know some people are really going to disagree with this decision, and if that's the case, that's totally okay. I might disagree with this decision later, but I think I've got a plan. Okay, this is after cleaning it, and to my surprise, it turns out the set was actually painted originally, and someone came in and stripped all that off of there. That's why the bakelite looked so porous. I mean, you'd have to use harsh chemicals to do that, or use a knife or something. I did notice the bakelite looked a little funny, so I feel better about painting it. So it was a painted radio from the factory, and painted it will become again. Anyway, it's really important that you clean everything that can remove oils and stuff from a bakelite surface. I use Simple Green. You can use foaming bathroom cleaner, and then you want to wipe it down with rubbing alcohol. You want to make sure you've got a good, clean, stable surface for the paint to adhere to. Your paint job will look a lot better. All right, so we have a nice warm yellow that I painted this. I know it's probably a divisive color, but I find when I paint these guys like this, they just immediately fly off the shelf. And again, I'm doing this to raise funds for the museum. None of it goes in my pocket, but I do it because I enjoy it. And the highlight color will be this kind of ivory color. I think those will look pretty nice. That'll kind of dampen down the yellow a little bit, kind of even it out. And then when I put the gold colored grill cloth replacement, that'll add a little bit more of an accent. And then that brown dye will kind of tie it together. Here I am talking like I'm a fashion designer, and I'm not. Welcome to day 2 of working on the Arvin. I couldn't remember the brand name for a second. Anyway, this has been sitting out here in the baking sun all day. I want to make sure the paint gets good and hardened up and cured before reassembly, which might be tonight, who knows. My wife actually has to go on a business trip, so I have the house to myself and I can waste all of my time, not like I already don't do this, on radios. And so yesterday I overhauled this guy, and the next step is to do what I tend to do on almost all these sets, which is to add an audio input feature. And it's pretty basic and simple. All you do is you'll go into the set's volume control, which is this guy here, and it'll have 3 legs. There'll be a top and a bottom and a center. And what we want to do is go in through the center. And no, not the center, I'm sorry, the top, which would be the basically the incoming IF signal. And let me get my flashlight out here because there's a lot of stuff buried. And it looks like that this lead, that's ground, because see, it's going to the back of the switch, which goes here and eventually goes through the safety cap. So that's the bottom of the pot. That means the top here, which has only 1 lead, goes here and then goes to the first IF transformer. So that is the incoming radio signal. And so what we're going to do is the positive of the audio goes in through the top, the negative to the bottom, which is right here. And we're going to have a little wire that comes in to give us the ability to switch the radio signal on and off. And lastly, due to the safety concerns, we can't just run it directly to the volume control, even though we've rectified the safety issue by putting a small capacitor in there. The user could still get a little bit of a jingle. So what we're going to do is add one of these isolation transformers, and it's going to be, we're going to put it as close as we can to the volume control, which is about right there. And we'll run the primary side towards the volume control. The secondary side will have the incoming audio line. And we'll need to drill a little hole back here and route the audio cable through, and we're going to put a rubber grommet in that hole to make sure it's not going to get cut by anything. And that way, the user can listen to AM radio, or if they want to listen to whatever's on their device, whether it be a phone or a Bluetooth or whatever, they can do that too. I look at it as basically giving these sets a little bit more of a meaningful chance at having a useful life again versus just sitting on someone's shelf doing nothing for another 50 years. And I know it's controversial. Some people are absolutely against it. I get it. Like, if you're welcome to have that opinion, totally fine. It's just as well as the decision to paint the set, even though it had been painted before. With all that said, I'm going to go ahead and install it. And when I'm done, I'll show you what I've done to explain how it all works. Okay, so I've added the audio input, and here's how it works. On the secondary side, we have our incoming audio through this cord that has a knot tied in the end so that you can't pull it through there. I'll probably add a dab of glue to keep that attached there, and it goes to a rubber grommet. And then the primary side of this transformer goes to the top and bottom of the volume pot. And then we have a switch wire coming out the back, and that will reconnect the top of the volume pot to the IF transformer. So right now I've got a little Bluetooth thingy running through it. See if I can turn this up one-handed. Sorry, it's kind of not great music to play on this, but you get the idea. So now all that's left is to, I always am paranoid about these guys coming loose, so I usually get some hot glue and put over the entire top. So if it does come loose, like it's not going to bang it into anything electrical. Never had one come loose though, but I'm just OCD. And then it'll be time to put the bottom back on and then attend to the cabinet, see if the paint is actually hardened up enough to reassemble. Okay, so I've got the chassis all put back together again, and now it's time to work on the cabinet. First things first is that the grill cloth on it was shot, so I found this nice goldish colored grill cloth. I think it'll go well with that kind of orangish yellow, but I first need to iron it out because it's got a bunch of wrinkles in it. Alright, so I got my trusty Black & Decker iron. I bought it at Goodwill or Salvation Army for $1.99. It's served me well for many years. Anyway, what I'm doing is I'm ironing it out. I put it over a towel. That's just a little tip that my wife taught me. Otherwise I probably would have burnt holes through it. But you want to be kind of careful. I use it on the steam setting, which says you're not supposed to. It says it's too hot for synthetics, but I do it anyway. And now we can bring the cabinet over here and install this. Okay, so the grill cloth was cut out and successfully installed. Let's use a little bit of wood glue. And let it dry here in the sun for a little bit. And in the meantime, what I'm also going to do is, actually I'm going to turn this around. I want the sun to get to that. I'm going to go in here and do one more thing, which is polish the plastic escutcheon, or the dial cover, because it's kind of yellowed and dull. And if the rest of the radio is going to look blingy and brand new, we want this to look blingy and brand new too. So I'm using Novus #2 Fine Scratch Remover. I'll just polish that up inside and out, clean it up, wait for the wood glue to dry a little bit, and then we can do final reassembly. Working pretty well, and I know it's a controversial paint job here, but I think it came together pretty well. Got kind of like light accentuated cream handles and knobs with gold grill cloth and kind of the orangish yellow paint. So either flame away or whatever. I know this is not original, but I think it looks really cool. I know that someone's going to love this. They're going to buy it. And again, the money goes right into preserving our artifacts at the museum as well as our community. So I know this will be a hit. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. And until the next time something crawls across my workbench, see you guys next time.